our job to revolutionize the world. Change will only come through struggle.
Бунт, погром, восстание, масс угнетенных.
Ramona Africa joins us today. Minister of Communication for the MOVE organization, she is also the only adult survivor of the May 13th, 1985 bombing of MOVE headquarters in Philadelphia, which led to the killing of 6 adults, including John Africa, and 5 children. For decades, Ramona has fought for the release of MOVE members and other political prisoners such as Mumia Abu-Jamal. Supporter of Earth First, animal rights organizations, and all those who fight for life and what is right. She is a positive role model, a strong mentor, and a true revolutionary. With that said, we're honored to have Ramona here today. Thank you for being here, Ramona.
Thank you for having me, and the biggest compliment you paid me in that introduction is saying a true revolutionary.
Which is very true. Not a problem, not a problem. Let's first start by talking a little bit about the history of MOVE and the founder, John Africa.
Well, the MOVE organization was founded in the early 1970s, like 1971. And MOVE's founder, John Africa, a black man who lived in Philadelphia, brought people together from various backgrounds, various religions, various social and economic backgrounds, various races, and beliefs, and made us a family. Gave us one common belief, and that belief is life. To respect, revere, and defend life above all else without categorizing, whether it's human life, animal life, the air, the water, the soil, life, period. And John Africa taught us that nothing is more important than life. Absolutely nothing. So in demonstrating our belief in life and the urgent need to protect and defend life, MOVE people had peaceful demonstrations at various institutions of the system here in Philadelphia and in New York and various other places. We demonstrated against the Philadelphia Zoo, the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. We demonstrated against a place called Puppy Palace. I don't think they exist anymore, but it was a pet store where you go and buy these puppies, and these little puppies they would have sitting in the window with the sun streaming on them all day. Half the time they didn't have a water bowl, and if they did, half the time the water had evaporated from the sun. And so we demonstrated these institutions. We demonstrated against unsafe boarding homes for the elderly. We demonstrated against DuPont Chemical and Dow Chemical for poisoning the environment. We had demonstrations at the reservoir where Philadelphians' drinking water comes from. We protested the poisoning of our drinking water. And we demonstrated against the school board here in Philadelphia for miseducating children and, not protecting children, because it's nothing new that children are abused physically, emotionally, and even sexually sometimes by school officials, or on their way to and from school, etc. So we had all these peaceful demonstrations, and initially officials of this system would just kind of ignore us, but they would send cops out to just watch us. Then they started audio taping what we were saying. Then they started videotaping, and I guess it sunk in that this is a problem. We cannot have them putting out this information, people hearing what they're saying. So then the first thing they did was offered MOVE people money and positions in this system, trying to co-opt us and buy us off. And we made it clear they didn't have anything that we needed or wanted. We have our direction. We know what we're doing. So don't think you're going to buy us off like you're used to doing, people. When they saw that we were serious, they went to their next phase. Because, I mean, officials of this system really just have one script that they follow. And so when they saw that the bribing, etc., didn't work, that's when they came with the brutality and attempted intimidation. When MOVE people would set up a peaceful demonstration at some institution of this system, the cops would come out and they would tell us that we had to pack up and go home, that we could not demonstrate. And MOVE people would come back at them saying, what are you talking about? Isn't this America, where you tell the world that in America there's freedom to protest, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and all of that? What? Does the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence say except MOVE? Yeah. You know, what are you talking about? That's when the beatings and brutality started. Our brothers were beat bloody, beat into broken limbs and concussions. Our sisters were beat by the police. Our pregnant MOVE women were beat, stomped, kicked into miscarriage. A 3-week-old MOVE baby was trampled to death by cops. And throughout all of this, not one single official was ever held accountable. So MOVE people were forced to take a position. We said, listen, we are a peaceful people. We are uncompromisingly opposed to violence, but we're not stupid. You know, John Africa gave us good sense. And while we are uncompromisingly opposed to violence, we do firmly believe in the principle of self-defense, the instinct of self-defense. There is not a species of life on this earth that Mother Nature, put on this earth that does not instinctively defend itself, from the tiniest creature to the largest. All right, that is the law. Self-defense is the law. You are not criminal, you are not wrong, you are not violent when you defend yourself. But you would be wrong, you would be criminal, you would be violent if you allow yourself to be attacked and abused and you refuse to defend yourself, because then you are suicidal, you are masochistic, you know. And that is wrong, that is criminal, that is against the law of life, you know. Oh my goodness, when that information got put out, you know these officials went crazy. What? Self-defense against us? You know. So that led to a year-long siege on MOVE, where cops surrounded our area where our home was in Powelton Village. And at one point, Rizzo, who was mayor then, Frank Rizzo, got the sanctioning from the courts to institute a starvation blockade around MOVE, where nobody could give us water or food. They turned off our water, they stopped the mail, you know. I mean, they were really trying to shut us down, but it didn't work, because MOVE stood strong and people around the world were aghast. And I remember reading an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is a very establishment, you know, newspaper. And this was during the time, you know, what was happening with us was during the time of the Iran hostage situation. And everybody was criticizing the Iranians for taking these hostages, etc. And this reporter, he interviewed an Iranian cop and was saying, you know, what do you feel about, you know, these hostages? Don't you think that's wrong? You know, we know they're being mistreated, blah, blah, blah. And this Iranian cop said, well, they're not being mistreated. They get food, they get water, they can exercise, they have a large area to, you know, exercise in. He said, but what about the people there in Philadelphia, that MOVE organization, where you are starving men, women, and babies? You know, what about that? Now that's abuse. I mean, they put it right back on this country and Philadelphia. So Rizzo and other officials were under a lot of pressure, and it ultimately broke the blockade. You know, the starvation blockade. They had to give ground. So that's how things basically escalated with MOVE, you know. And they saw that MOVE is serious about our belief. When you know something is right and you can prove it right, you can be strong about your position. Because John Africa taught us, if you have what is right, you cannot compromise that and still be right. You can't. You know, when you compromise right, then you got something other than right. Your body is correct. It's coordinated by nature, by Mother Nature. To eliminate an arm, to add an eye, that makes it something other than what it is, you know. Same with the principle of righteousness. If you got something that's right, to adjust it any kind of way is to have something other than what is right. So that keeps MOVE people going and strong.
Tell us a little bit about the events leading up to the August 8th, 1978 attack.
Okay. Well, where I left off in terms of the starvation blockade and the pressure on this system, they were forced after a year. The blockade started in May of 1977, May 20th actually. And by May of 1978, there was so much pressure on the Philadelphia government and the state and the federal, because they were all in it together, that they had to back off. So people don't know about this, and this is unprecedented. One of the demands of MOVE people was that we wanted our innocent sisters and brothers, political prisoners, released from prison. Some of them were already sentenced to state time. Others were awaiting sentencing. And we said we wanted them home. It was like 5 of them, including one of our white members, Sue Africa. And initially Rizzo said, we don't negotiate with terrorists. So we just held our position. He did what he felt like he had to do, and we did what we felt like we had to do. In the end, it was the government that had to give ground and concede. They brought our sisters and brothers from the state prisons, and Sue was in the county jail, brought them to MOVE headquarters, released them, let them go. And then we allowed them to come in, inspect the house, because in May of '77, MOVE people displayed arms and said, we will defend ourselves. But the guns were inoperable, but they didn't know that. So after they came in and inspected and everything and got the weapons and saw that they were all inoperable, oh my God, they were pissed. So at that point, the starvation blockade was over and everything, and they said that they wanted MOVE people out of MOVE headquarters by August 1st. MOVE people never agreed to that. So our family was home, you know, the prisoners, and most MOVE people, a lot of MOVE people, went on other activities in Richmond, Virginia, in Rochester, New York. So on August 1st, when some MOVE people were coordinated to remain at MOVE headquarters, they went crazy. They're supposed to be out. August 1st, they're supposed to have vacated MOVE headquarters, etc. And MOVE made it clear we never agreed to that. You know, on August 5th, no, sorry, August 2nd, Judge G. Fred DeBona had a hearing on the eviction, on MOVE people, you know, having to leave MOVE headquarters. He issued warrants for every MOVE person he knew, even some that he knew was not in MOVE headquarters, that had gone to Virginia and New York, etc. On August 5th, well, let me back up. There's so much. At this hearing on August 2nd, the issue was whether or not MOVE people should be held in contempt for not vacating MOVE headquarters. There was a couple, Lamont and Mumia Africa, who had left MOVE headquarters. They left MOVE. They were like, we just can't take it. You know, we don't have the strength. We just can't do this. And so they left. But Judge DeBona had issued warrants for everybody he knew, even though they knew they weren't in there. Exactly. So Lee Singh and Lamont came to court and said, you know, we're not MOVE members anymore. We're not involved with it. We don't intend to, you know, become MOVE members again, etc. He just let them go. On August 5th, they sent cops down to Richmond, Virginia, where they knew some family members were. And they brought back two of our sisters, Gail and Rhonda, brought them back to Philadelphia. Now, the issue was supposed to be that people had not vacated MOVE headquarters. Yeah. But obviously, they weren't in MOVE headquarters. They were in Richmond, Virginia. Brought them back, and they were supposed to have dropped the charges on MOVE people when that blockade came down. So they brought Rhonda and Gail back and, you know, recharged them. Then, this was on August 5th. August 8th, that's when they came in and attacked MOVE people under the guise that MOVE people had not vacated MOVE headquarters. Now, the thing is, you're not even talking about a criminal issue there. You're talking about a civil issue, an eviction, you know? And they came with hundreds of cops armed for war. The aim at that point, just like in '85, was to kill, not to arrest. To kill. And MOVE people understood that very clearly. In their fervor to kill off MOVE people, and they came in the middle of the night, the wee hours of the morning, you know, in their fervor to kill off MOVE people, they ended up shooting one of their own, you know. And people can look at MOVE askance when we tell them that James Ramp was shot by friendly fire. But MOVE didn't invent the term friendly fire. That did not come from us. That came from the system, from warmongers who have seen countless situations where people are shot, wounded, killed by their own, you know, team players, okay? Exactly. And that's where that term came from, so don't act like this is just so ridiculous. Like I said, we didn't invent the term, all right? Anyway, we say that they came to kill because they did. Cops later admitted that they had put so much tear gas in the basement, had pumped so much water in the basement from fire hoses, deluge hoses, that they couldn't really see anything in the basement. But they could hear babies crying. So they emptied their guns, reloaded, and emptied them again in corners where they heard babies crying. Now, That's murder. That's attempted murder. You're trying to kill somebody with that. No MOVE people were killed in 78, but a cop was killed. So, having failed in their mission to kill MOVE people, hey, what next better step than to try to put MOVE people in prison for the rest of their life as long as possible? So they charged MOVE people with the murder of police officer James Ramp, even though the cops admit that all MOVE people, they had sent 3 teams into MOVE headquarters, from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor to the 1st floor. They determined that all MOVE people were in the basement. MOVE people are in the basement. James Ramp is standing outside on street level. So you're talking about, what, maybe 6 feet above a basement. James Ramp was shot not by our findings, but by the medical examiner's findings. He was shot on a downward angle. Downward angle. How can somebody 6 feet below me shoot me standing 6 feet above them on a downward angle? It's physically impossible. Nevertheless, they charged 9 of my sisters and brothers with murder. My family members went to trial. They chose what's called a bench trial, a trial by the judge alone. They decided this because they were putting the burden of this whole thing on the system. They were not going to allow this government to railroad them and then blame it on the people and the, persons of jurors. They put the burden on this system in the person of the judge. So, Judge Malmed presided over the trial. Within hours after my family was arrested, I have to mention this, the city sent a demolition team out and completely demolished MOVE headquarters. Understand, this is the scene of the crime. This is vital evidence. Since when do officials destroy evidence in a murder, situation, a murder trial where a cop is killed? They demolished MOVE headquarters. They never would have done that if they really believed that MOVE people killed the cop. MOVE people raised that issue, and they said, it's a mood issue, it doesn't matter. They have photos of the house that they could use, which is bull. Exactly. Which is bull. I mean, if they do a drug raid, and take pictures of the drugs, and then the drugs are destroyed, where's the evidence? A picture? I mean, come on. So MOVE people went through the trial representing themselves, and they literally destroyed the prosecution and their witnesses. They, just unbelievably exposed the lies that prosecution witnesses were telling, the contradictions, etc. It was so clear, At the end of throughout the actual trial, Judge Malmed started throwing MOVE people out of the courtroom, 1 and 2 at a time, till no MOVE defendants remained. MOVE people had told these attorneys that were assigned to them as backup lawyers in case they had any questions or whatever. MOVE people told them, you cannot represent us. We don't want you cross-examining any witnesses, putting on any evidence or witnesses. You make it clear that we have told you you cannot represent us. Of course, the lawyers are arrogant and wouldn't listen, wanted to do things their way. So they went crying to the Superior Court and the Supreme Court. Our clients told us that we can't represent them, not to do anything, and we just don't know what to do, so what should we do? You do what your clients told you, you know? But, of course, the judges told them, oh no, you go in and zealously represent your clients. They're the ones that got moved 30 to 100 years. Because move people were only in the courtroom to represent themselves maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that, of, months-long trial. So they're the ones that got moved, convicted, and that 30 to 100-year sentence. Alright, so at the end of the trial, despite all of the truth that came out during that trial, Judge Malmet convicted moved people, all nine of murder, not one of murder and the other a conspiracy. So he convicted them, then he sentenced them. A day or two after sentencing the Move 9, he goes on this radio talk show. Mumia heard him, so he called in, and he asked him one question. He said, Judge Malmet, I have one question. Who killed James Rand on August 8th of 78? Judge Malmet responds, I haven't the faintest idea. That's what he said. He had just convicted 9 people, sentenced 9 people to 30 to 100 years each in prison. So, after that, Move people didn't go crazy. We've had the necessary and available appeals filed. But that's not all we did. We got out in the streets. John Africa had been on trial in federal court and whooped him, got acquitted of every single charge, and got released along with our brother Mo Africa, who was on trial with John Africa. So John Africa had just come home, and he started a newspaper, for the Move organization called First Day, so that we could get information out, to people. And we would go all over Philadelphia distributing that newspaper, talking to people. We sold watermelons to help raise funds, and we would write our phone number and marker on the watermelon, and if people weren't satisfied, they could call us and we would bring them another one. So people were very interested and got a lot of information from us, and we encouraged them to start, questioning these officials. And they did, and it was getting too hot for these officials. They were like, what's going on here? We're getting all these questions and people asking us about Move and all that. So, they just really made a decision that they were going to have to get rid of us once and for all. And that is what the May 13th, 1985 bombing of me and my family was about. Had nothing to do with any complaints from neighbors. When has this government ever cared about black folks complaining about their neighbors? They don't care about white folks complaining about their neighbors, But they want people to believe that a handful of black folks complained about Move and got the local, state, and federal government together to come out there like they did in May of '85. Come on now. When I say the unrelenting fight for the Move 9 is what led to the bombing, what I mean by that is that the fight continues. It's still going on because my family is serving their 36th year of unjust imprisonment. There are 6 years beyond the minimum 30-year sentences that they got. And the reason, that they're still in jail is because the parole board refuses to parole them. The prisons recommend my family for parole. My family are not what is seen as problem inmates, you know. They're not involved in all the jailhouse madness that goes on. But the parole board just refuses to parole them. They say they're denying them parole because they refuse to take responsibility for their crimes on August 8th, 1978. My family has been telling them for over 30 years now that they didn't commit no crime. And the issue is that guilt or innocence doesn't determine parole. You've already been convicted. Everybody that sees the parole board has already been found guilty. So guilt or innocence is not the issue. The issue is supposed to be your conduct while in prison, you know, and whether you have an acceptable home plan and job plan. But when it comes to MOVE and a lot of other political prisoners, that means nothing. They're just determined not to parole them. There is a brother named Veronza Bowers, who is one of the Virgin Island 7, I think it is. This man did every day of his time. He did his complete sentence. And when it was time for him to be released, Ashcroft said, "Oh no, we consider him a threat to society. We're not releasing him." Now, he doesn't have any charges at this point. He did all his time. But they're like, we're not letting him go. We don't care. That's the system that we're dealing with, that we're fighting, you know. And that's why MOVE people will never stop fighting, particularly for our family members that are still locked down in these prisons. And, you know, one thing I will leave you with in terms of the MOVE 9 is that MOVE people will never sit back and allow this rotten, corrupt system to call our family murderers. First of all, when they know they're innocent. But even if they had killed James Ramp strapped on a gun that morning and came out to MOVE headquarters to kill my family, you know. So I'm saying, despite all of that, my family are not murderers, and we're not going to allow this government to label them murderers. The same government that dropped the bomb on MOVE people, burnt babies alive, some of the babies of the MOVE 9 that they got in prison, calling them murderers, and nobody is ever held accountable for murdering those babies. Oh no, we're not going to allow that. You can't trick MOVE people like that, you know. We're not going to sit back and allow them to call Mumia Abu-Jamal, Leonard Peltier, the Puerto Rican independistas, and others murderers. We're not going to allow this murderous government to try to turn the tables and blame the victims. No, we're not.
Now, Mumia Africa died while she was incarcerated in prison. It seems like that was very suspicious. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, we are. Well, let me take that back. We're not suspicious. We know they killed her. You know, you're talking about a strong, healthy MOVE woman, you know, who ran, who exercised, you know. There was nothing wrong with Mumia. For them to say anything to try to put it on Mumia like something was wrong with her, that is completely unacceptable. We cannot pinpoint what they did. But one thing we do know, a couple of things we know, they kept changing the cause of death. We kept pressing, saying, well, what killed her? How did she die? First thing they said was natural causes. And we're saying, well, what exactly does that mean? What killed her? Then they said, oh, well, what did they say? She had lumps, what do they call those things? You know, the things that travel
Like a blood clot?
Yeah.
Okay.
She had blood clots in her legs that traveled up to her heart. We're like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Then they said, oh, well, she had cancer in her. She had ovarian cancer in her. We're like, yeah, right. Well, what is it? Exactly. Which one is it? What is it?
Exactly.
You know, but the point is, the way we look at it very simply, Merle was living the life she chose prior to August 8th of 78. This government said she was wrong, she was criminal, that she needed to be corrected, and they took charge of her life. They took custody of her, sent her to what they call a correctional institution. They determined from that point on how Merle lived, what she ate and didn't eat, when she got up, when she went to bed, the kind of job she had. They determined her life. They coordinated her life. Merle wanted to eat raw food, wanted garlic. They said that's contraband, you can't have garlic. But they give inmates free cigarettes. Yeah. That's not contraband, you know. So Merle was not allowed to live her life. They determined her life. Once they took custody of her, then they are responsible for everything that happened to her. If she stubbed a toe, that was their responsibility. All right. So even though we can't pinpoint exactly what they did, it's their responsibility, and that's how we look at it, very simply.
Now, as we're talking about suspicious deaths, Birdie Africa, who was the only child survivor of the May 13th, 1985 bombing, he subsequently died on a Carnival cruise. Well, it wasn't Carnival, it was the Caribbean Dream or something like that. Is there any question about that, or do you feel like that, you know, was suspicious?
Well, we don't really know. We do have a question about how you drown in a hot tub. I mean, according to his biological father, who he was with, Birdie didn't take any drugs. He didn't drink. He was very health conscious. So how do you drown in a hot tub? Birdie was a swimmer from a child, you know. So how do you drown in a hot tub? I mean, I guess it's possible, but yeah, it's questionable, very questionable. But the thing is, you know, it really moved people when we heard about it. But from May 13th on, the government took Birdie from us. His biological father, Andino Ward, had not been in Birdie's life since he was an infant. But Birdie's mother was killed in a bombing. And because this government did not want Birdie back with us, they dug him out of the woodwork and gave him custody of Birdie. And he gave Birdie a whole different life that Birdie was used to living. And he would not allow Birdie to have any contact with us or us any contact with him. And once Birdie, you know, was grown, he had been so victimized by that lifestyle, and we don't push ourselves on anybody. We made it clear that we love Birdie. He was welcome to come see us, talk to us, to come back to us, whatever he wanted to do, you know, whenever he wanted to do it. That's all we could do, you know. But we had to just realize that the Michael Moses Ward who died on that cruise ship was not the Birdie Africa that we knew. You know?
Tell us a little bit about Mumia Abu-Jamal, the reasons why he's in prison, and some things that people are doing to try to get him released.
Mumia Abu-Jamal is a long-time MOVE supporter. He was the only journalist here in Philadelphia that covered MOVE accurately and consistently, went up to the prisons to interview MOVE people, MOVE prisoners, interviewed officials as well, you know, But he was the only one that told the truth about MOVE and about a lot of other issues like judicial corruption, police brutality. I mean, Mumia was truly the voice of the voiceless, is the voice of the voiceless. And that's what earned him the scorn of this system, its representatives, because Mumia would not compromise. Mumia could have been the next Ed Bradley, Morley Safer, you know, any big-time journalist that you can think of. But that was not Mumia's aspirations, you know. He wanted to tell the truth. He wanted to be a man of the people. And because of that, he lost jobs, you know, which is why on the night of December 9th, 1981, he was driving a cab. He became a freelance journalist because he was not going to just continuously have people threatening his job and trying to make him toe the line and all of that. He worked for WHYY, you know, public radio, public television. I mean, he did all of that. But he was not going to allow that to control him, you know. So as a freelance journalist, trying to support his family, he got a job as a taxi driver. And that's what he was doing on the night of December 9th. We don't know if it was a setup or what. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that night Mumia was accused of killing police officer Daniel Faulkner, and he did not. Daniel Faulkner was assaulting Mumia's brother. Mumia didn't even know it was his brother Billy at first, you know, until he got closer to the scene. And he did not shoot this cop, and the evidence is overwhelming to show that he didn't. Faulkner was shot with a .44 caliber bullet, according to the ballistics expert. Mumia was licensed to carry a .38 because he had gotten robbed several times driving his cab at night, you know. So once the police realized that they had Mumia Abu-Jamal in custody, because Faulkner actually shot Mumia. And once they realized they had him in custody, they, oh my God, they brutalized him. You know, they brutalized him. Then the lies started about how he confessed, which is a lie. Even the doctor said that was a lie. Mumia made no such statement. I mean, it was just one lie after the other. Because once they realized they had Mumia, they weren't interested in anything else. Because Daniel Faulkner, Officer Faulkner, was not the issue. Just like with MOVE, Officer Ramp, James Ramp, was not the issue. Yeah. It was MOVE that's the issue. It's Mumia that is the issue. And Mumia went on trial before Judge Albert Sabo, and the attorney that they appointed for Mumia at that time, at the very beginning, he had no experience with death penalty cases. He had a drug problem. They would not even give him any allowance for any kind of experts. I mean, they were just, it was clear they were determined to railroad Mumia. Look, they got their hands on him, and that was it, you know. And just like with MOVE, they threw Mumia out of the courtroom, you know, because he wouldn't just sit back and accept all the madness that they were trying to spit on him. The jury went out to deliberate. It was either on July 2nd, I think it was. And Judge Sabo told them basically, well, you can go in there and like waste time and deliberate, but it's the 4th of July weekend. I know you don't want to be in it. I mean, it was unbelievable. So they convicted Mumia, and then they gave him the death penalty. you know, because the district attorney, Joe McGill, he kept talking all this stuff about Mumia was a Black Panther. He waited all these years to kill a police officer. I mean, it was crazy, you know. But the jury came back with the death penalty, you know. And we've been fighting for Mumia and having his back since December 9th of 1981, when his colleagues and a lot of other people didn't. You know, we're the ones that kept Mumia out there. When I say we, I'm talking about the MOVE organization, because John Africa heard it on the news the night it happened and sent us right to the hospital where they had taken Mumia, and we've been on the case ever since, you know. And now Mumia has international support, you know. In Germany, one of the most racist countries there is, the Japanese dyad, Madame Danielle Mitterrand, before she passed away, went to visit Mumia, came here to Philadelphia talking to officials about Mumia, you know. I mean, just all over France, Spain, you know, Italy, Africa, just everywhere, you know. People are supporting Mumia and working for Mumia. And it's amazing, you know, it's gratifying, but the work is not done, and we really had to caution people when Mumia came off of death row. Don't get lax. Don't get lax. He's off of death row. He's not out of prison yet, okay? You know. So we're still working hard. We've had to go to war with Mumia's attorneys at this point. They are the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, because when Obama nominated Dabo Adebili for the U.S. Justice Department Civil Rights Litigation Unit, the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, and a lot of crazy racist legislators went crazy, because Dabo Adebili used to be with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and he did a lot of work, you know, on various issues, but he was there when Mumia got off of death row, and he filed petitions. Well, he didn't file them. Members of his unit filed petitions in support of Mumia. And so the Fraternal Order of Police and various other legislators went crazy. Oh, he defended a cop killer and he's crazy. How can we ever have him in the U.S. Justice Department? How could Obama dare to nominate him? Blah, blah, blah. They went crazy. Recycled all of the lies that he confessed, that this and that. And Mumia's attorneys never said a word to dispute the lies, which would have been very simple, because they've been disputed for 33 years now, you know. They didn't say a word, and we confronted them about it, you know. Well, the courtroom is our arena, you know, we're not going to get in the media, blah, 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 and that was a lie, because they put out several press releases about Dabo Adebili. You know, so we weren't going to sit back and let them throw Mumia under the bus like that and not expose him, you know. So it's very important for people to understand that just because Mumia is off of death row, that's not the end of this battle here, you know. So.
Talk to us a little bit about Russell Schultz.
Russell Schultz is a political prisoner from Philadelphia. He's been in prison at least 40 years now, I think. He was in solitary for most of that time, and he likes working with the young brothers that come through the prison, and prison officials don't want him educating and talking to, you know, the young brothers that come through there. He also is one of those like escaped slaves, ones that will not accept slavery and keep trying to escape, and he has escaped several times, so they misuse that to keep him in solitary. He just got out of solitary this year. I mean, he was in solitary like 22 years straight, and before that he had a little break, but he was in solitary for at least a decade before that. So you know, he's a brother. I won't say that he didn't do whatever they accused him of, but he's a freedom fighter.
Exactly.
He's a revolutionary, you know. The brother in Louisiana, you know, Albert Woodfox, one of the Angola Three, the last remaining one in prison. They overturned those convictions, I think 3 times, and just would not do anything with them, you know. They will not release these brothers. One, Robert Wilkinson, got released some years ago. Herman Wallace, he just got released, you know, several months ago, within the last 6 months, and died a few days after being released because he was very sick and he was dying. And they finally released him, despite the fact that the convictions had been overturned and he should have been out.
Exactly.
You know, he died a few days after being released, and now Albert Woodfox is the last remaining one in prison, and he shouldn't be in prison. I think the 3 of them went to prison on very minimal charges, but once in prison, not only did they get politicized, but the government set them up, accused them of killing this prison guard, which it's very clear that they did not do. And even the wife of the prison guard that was killed was calling for the 3 of them, their release, you know. So it's just very clear that anybody that dares to tell the truth, stand for what is right, this system, you know, it doesn't want that. It's not going to stand for it. It's going to do everything, and, you know, everything possible to try to break you down and kill you if necessary, quickly or low, slow, long, drawn out death. You know, our brother Leonard Peltier, nothing gets my blood boiling more than to hear any official call Leonard Peltier a murderer. I don't care what happened on the Pine Ridge Reservation. I don't care. The fact that it is a reservation is a problem, you know, and the fact that these 2 FBI agents came on the reservation all arrogant and, you know, defiant and bullying people is a problem. You know, nobody is going to get in my face and convince me to call any indigenous person a murderer. You know, not the very people that slaughtered Leonard's people, indigenous people, into virtual extinction. They're going to call him a murderer? Come on now. How is that possible? How can anybody fall for that? You know? No, not going to happen. Ruchell McGee, he's a brother out in California in the Bay Area who was Angela Davis's co-defendant. But you don't hear about him. Angela rarely talks about him. He was her co-defendant. But they severed their trials because Ruchell is very outspoken and uncompromising, and Angela had the Communist Party behind her, you know, so they split. She went home, and he's been in solitary confinement most of those years. Yeah, he had charges from the Marin County shootout, Marin County courthouse shootout, and, you know, he's still sitting in jail all these years later. all these years later, you know, because he survived that shootout. Dr. Mutulu Shakur, you know, a doctor of acupuncture who, as you pointed out, you know, devised this treatment for drug offenders, drug addicts. And it's a very workable treatment. And I think it's being used, you know. But he's in prison for being a freedom fighter, you know, for working with freedom fighters. Worked with Assata, you know, helped to liberate Assata. So these people hate him. You know, they hate him. And they don't want to let him go at all. But, you know, these are our freedom fighters, and they deserve our support. We are obligated to give them our support. I mean, how trifling is it to have somebody defending you, fighting for you, putting their lives, their freedom on the line for you. And when they need your support, you act like you don't even know them, you know? You're too busy, you know? Move. We're not rotten merchants. We are not rotten merchants. We believe in being fair, in being honest, being true, you know? And that's why we do the work that we do for life, and that includes our freedom fighters.
Throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there were a lot of people who were, you know, civically motivated, civically active. Nowadays, you don't see that too much. What do you think is the difference? What do you think is going on?
Well, I think that people, at least people of color, have gotten pacified. You have more elected officials than ever that are people of color, that are women. You know, people have been deluded into believing that we've come so far. I mean, look, we have a black president, you know. And people have been duped into overlooking all of the police killings. And not only police, I mean, look at Trayvon Martin. That guy wasn't even a bona fide cop, you know. Overlooked the fact that the things that the civil rights movement was fighting for, education, the right to send your kids to college, you know, decent housing and all of that stuff, fighting, against poverty, it still exists. People still can't send their kids to school, you know, to college, etc. They're closing schools right and left. So people seem to overlook that and focus on some illusion of we've arrived, we've made it, you know? Where's the proof of it? Where's the proof? And I think people have been pacified. They've been pacified with this stuff. I mean, if you ask me, maybe we need more Rizzos and George Bushes and Strom Thurmans and, you know, Barry Goldwaters. And, yeah, you know, maybe we need a lot more of them so people don't hallucinate about what's going on here.
It seems like people are only interested once it affects them, in a lot of ways.
But even when it affects them, you know, I'll give you two examples, the difference between MOVE and others. I have seen a lot of news items, news stories on TV where people have been wrongfully imprisoned for decades and finally get released. News person puts the mic in their face. How do you feel? Are you bitter or whatever? Oh, no, I'm not bitter at all. I just want to get on with my life. You're not what? You know? What are you talking about? You're supposed to be bitter, you know? When I filed a federal suit after the bombing, and it didn't go to court until 11 years later, till after I was out of prison. It went to federal court. And at the end of it, the courts had only left 3 defendants in the suit. I had a long list of defendants. They had given everybody immunity except the police commissioner, fire commissioner, and the city of Philadelphia. Everybody else, Wilson Good, the managing director, specific cops, and various people, tossed them out the suit. So, in the end, the jury found them liable. The judge comes back after the jury's verdict and grants the police and fire commissioner immunity. After the verdict now.
Yeah.
And so it was only the city of Philadelphia that was held liable. So when I come out of court, all the media's out front. And this one woman, Marge Paula, something like that, her name was. The mic in my face. Well, Ramona, doesn't this prove that, you know, the justice system works, that there is justice? I guess she expected me to say, yes, I'm pleased with the outcome. I said, no, if it worked, I never would have had to be here.
Exactly.
You know, what are you talking about?
Yep.
I mean, I don't understand people who are victimized like that and then come out saying, oh no, I'm not bitter, I'm just happy things turned out. Come on.
Yeah.
That's why things like this continue to happen.
Yep.
You know? I mean, so that's part of the reason why things are the way they are today. You know? Look, those running this system, they're not giving up nothing. You have to fight for everything that you get. You have to fight for what's right, because they have no intention of doing right. You're only going to get it if you fight for it and never stop fighting for it, because they're not going to hand it to you on a silver platter. Trust that.
Are there current projects that you're working on that you would like people to be aware of?
Absolutely. One project specifically dealing with the Move 9 is we are in the process of searching for about 6 attorneys, independent attorneys, to review 2 issues concerning the Move 9 trial on August 8th. The destruction of evidence, the demolition of the house, and the fact that once that was done, there should not even have been a trial. And Judge Malmed saying that he did not have the faintest idea who killed James Rand. I mean, just those 2 issues alone. We want an independent panel of attorneys to review that and issue their report. The other thing is, the District Attorney of Philadelphia, Seth Williams, has announced the creation of a new unit called the Conviction Review Unit. And what this unit is supposedly charged with is reviewing cases that smack of prosecutorial misconduct, judicial misconduct, you know, where innocent people could possibly be sitting in jail. So we're saying, oh, that's great. The Move 9 and Mumia should be at the top of the list, and if they're not, we want to know why. So those are 2 projects that we're in the process of really pushing to call attention to, you know, the District Attorney's unit for Mumia and Move, and this panel of attorneys for the Move 9 to review case of the Move 9, those 2 issues.
And now, what are some good websites for people who want to get involved, you know, want to support, you know, this cause? What would be the best website for people to check out?
Well, we have a website called On the Move. That's ONAMOVE.com. OnTheMove.com. People can email me at ONAMOVE, that's On the Move, LLJA for Long Live John Africa, gmail.com. People can call me at 215-386-1165. And feel free to call, to email, and check out the website. You know, there are very simple things that we tell people that they can do in support of the Move 9. We're not asking people to be out on the front line, to go to jail or anything like that. We're saying that there is so much work to do across the board that we know everybody can find their niche. The only wrong thing to do is nothing. People can send us postage stamps, you know. They can send us donations for postage stamps or Kinko cards or Staples copying cards. They can send the Move 9 prisoners donations toward their phone cards to call home and anybody else they need to call for postage. Our brother Phil does artwork. He paints and sketches, and he buys, you know, the materials he needs for that. Buy a DVD. There's Let the Fire Burn. There's Move Confrontation in Philadelphia about the 1978 police attack under Rizzo. There's a documentary called Move, done by students in Amherst College in Massachusetts, UMass at Amherst. Get the film. You can get them from us. You know, get one, invite some people over, or get a room in the library or community center and show it. You know, on our website are the addresses of the Move 9. Jot them a note. Make contact with them directly, you know. So there's a lot that people can do, and it doesn't take a lot of energy and time and all of that. We tell people, do what you feel comfortable with. If you have young children, get involved in this work. Even if you just agree to watch other young kids so their parents can be more involved and do what they need to do, you know, in this revolution. If you have a vehicle and there are people running around like crazy trying to get stuff done, get here and get there, offer to take them where they need to go. Something simple like that, you know. If you have access to photocopying, you know, or if you're a computer geek and you know how to make flyers and stuff, offer your skills for that. I mean, start off doing what you feel comfortable with and see where that takes you. Yeah.
We usually like to end our segments with a revolutionary quote, and I was wondering if today you would give us the honor of sending us off with either a revolutionary quote or a few words.
I feel honored to do that. I will give you a quote from Move's loved founder, John Africa. To quote John Africa, the coordinator quote, "When you are committed to doing what is right, the power of righteousness will never betray you." End quote. John Africa. Long live John Africa. Long live the Move 9. Long live Mumia Abu-Jamal, Leonard Peltier, Sundiata Acoli, the Puerto Rican Independistas, the Zapatistas, Earth First, the Earth Liberation Front, the Animal Liberation Front. Long live all of those who fight for freedom, who fight for life. Long live the spirit of resistance. Long live revolution. On the move.